Today is a review of the just great The Best of Roger Zelazny. I've spent a few weeks here getting over some kind of cold, so my voice may not sound the greatest, which it never does anyway, but so we will be doing a review of The Best of Roger Zelazny. And this is an SF Masterworks 2023 publication by Gollancz / Ryan, and they really performed a service for the science fiction crowd here. I have really enjoyed reading this book, and published in 2023 in the UK. Lots of different stuff here about the copyrights. Introduction by Lisa Tuttle. And we will take a look at the table of contents. A Rose for Ecclesiastes, Corrida, Damnation Alley, Divine Madness, For a Breath I Tarry, He Who Shapes, Home is the Hangman, Loki 7281, Permafrost, The Doors of His Face, The Lamps of His Mouth, The Great Slow Kings, The Keys to December, and Last Defender of Camelot. I rate 11 of these titles in this volume to be a 10 or 9 out of 10. 2 titles just a little lower. Damnation Alley, 8 out of 10. If you had a big brother or are the oldest brother, you may recognize some of Hal Tanner's tactics in Damnation Alley. Unfortunately, when they made the movie out of Damnation Alley, the producers of Star Wars and Damnation Alley took funds from Zelazny's story and shunted them to Star Wars, kind of destroying the story, and it really doesn't have much to do. There are some basics between the short story and the movie, but they really shortchanged Zelazny, the actors, and us by underfunding the movie. At any rate, I'll rate Corrida a 7 out of 10. Now I'm going to say this and it'll sound silly, but I sat in my recliner with my laptop writing this review. And you'll see why later I'm saying that. These short stories and novellas are an example of how good thought-provoking SF can be. Also, Zelazny pulls off the author's trick that these can be read completely at face value with no research at all. But Zelazny references and names multiple historical, intellectual, philosophical, religious, and ideological figures, and he also references some just made-up propaganda characters, as in the Camelot fiction, which Zelazny and a lot of other people just think was propaganda for the masses. And Zelazny subtly destroys Camelot in The Last Defender of Camelot. The Camelot short story is just one example of Zelazny's skepticism regarding philosophy, ideology, history, anything developed with totalitarian rule in charge. However, you can certainly read and enjoy these without researching every name in detail. I did look them up, and of course, I was doing a lot of other things at the same time, so it took me 3 weeks to read these masterpieces, and I spent a lot of time researching them, and I learned a lot. Married twice, Zelazny had children, and includes some relationship perspectives. Now, I'm going to sound a little silly here maybe, but I think Zelazny is one of the patron saints of science fiction. He promotes autodidact style self-learning. And of course I include A.E. Van Vogt, early Robert A. Heinlein, Eric Blair, Aldous Huxley, Robert Sheckley, Donald Westlake, E. Smith, James Blish, etc. There's a whole lot of folks who do that. Now, Zelazny does name most of his characters very carefully and intentionally, with most having a powerful historic presence or meaning. He also uses allegory and analogy with some downright parallels to actual events. And he has different takes on many of the topics that he uses compared to some of the scholars that he points you to. But many of those he mentions are also skeptical. I will say that I've always found the original novellas found here were superior to the novelized versions later. The introduction by Lisa Tuttle is very good. Every story in this collection is good or great. And many are not so esoteric, even if you are expecting them to be. And I would suggest reading every story in the book, easily worth your time. But we would be here for hours if I tried to review all of these stories. I have a previous review of The Doors of His Face and the Lamps of His Mouth. The Doors of His Face, the Lamps of His Mouth is a great work of science fiction. I also have a standalone review of The Lord of Light, which is, of course, not included in here. And I also review Trumps of Doom on my page, which does seem to borrow a lot from Home is the Hangman. I really had a hard time narrowing down which story to review, but I chose Home is the Hangman novella for a complete review. And it showcases Zelazny's education skills and a lot of his thoughts. I first read this story by Zelazny in 1981, as I missed the Analog magazine November 1975 that it was first published in. This is my Analog Reader's Choice from 1981, where people wrote in and expressed what they thought were the best stories of Analog. And you've got a lot of the older stories, but we come right down to Home is the Hangman, November 1975, by Roger Zelazny. And I'm going to go ahead and show you guys that a little bit here. And there it is. I had read this in 1981, but I was still in college. I'd been sent back to college and was working full-time and was on call by 1982. So my analytical skills were being used elsewhere at that time when I read this story. Now, the main character early in the story discusses the completed World Central Database state of citizen tracking, categorizing, and cataloging of citizen past activities and historical perspectives on this project. Now, this is back in 1975. The database project leads to being able to predict someone's actions. Not exactly mind reading, but I do suggest you look up the current state of that research as of today. That's kind of shocking. Zelazny's self-defense training, he had a black belt, and his personal combat descriptions. He also taught self-defense, judo, and other sources. And his personal combat descriptions are excellent and are quite credible. In Home is the Hangman, we first meet a person told in first person who is waiting with other armed men for a presumed violent encounter. Several of the men are outside scouting for the presumed attacker, and gunshots are heard. We jump to a long flashback. This man was instrumental in creating the World Central Data Bank that now exists. Here's the flashback. Here's the first page. All of this is the flashback. Then we come back to the present right here. As a computer expert, he takes great care in exiling himself from the database world that he helped create, and he lives in the real world. He has set himself up as a non-person private investigator. And he is, now this is like 10 years after, this story takes place about 10 years after the World Central Databank state has been created. And he is hired by folks who need such an investigator. He is contacted and hired by his usual intermediary, if I can speak today, Don Walsh, through a very interesting, detailed, and premonitory conversation for 1975. The main character presumes the name John Donne for this investigation. I looked up who John Donne really was, and that's kind of important to the story. Don begins his investigation. We learn that the hangman, an AI with great strength, resilience, anthropomorphic design for using human instrumentalities, and literally undefined intelligence, has returned to Earth. This originally telefactored, meaning remote-controlled through next-to-telepathy technology robot, was created to explore the solar system, and he has unexpectedly returned to Earth. One of his creators has died, and this appears to be a murder. We learn that one of the 4 hangman creators has become a powerful politician, and that he is doing the hiring of Don. The hangman supposedly suffered a psychotic breakdown 10 years ago during his space exploration mission, which had been launched about 20 years ago. Hangman completes a few years of the mission, then becomes irrational and contact is broken until his return is detected, still with no contact. Presumed lost, the U.S. government no longer maintained the hangman contact technology. More of the original team that created Hangman are passing violently, and John learns that all 4 of them, at the completion of the Hangman project, had taken the hangman out of the research buildings to explore using their telefactoring helmet. This unwise move leads to a severe accident, resulting in a man being killed during their drunken outing. It is presumed this event has caused Hangman significant distress, and that he had gained a lot more self-awareness through his mind-to-mind interactions with humans than thought previously. Is he home to assuage his guilt by punishing the guilty? Can man emulate God in his ability to create? This topic is discussed during the investigation. A very interesting talk between John and David Fentress, Hangman co-creator, and I really recommend reading that. David knew John before he went into exile. David does not recognize John, as John has changed his appearance. On page 327, Carl Mannheim is mentioned and somewhat quoted on this page, highly recommended reading. Real people mentioned in the story: John Donne, H.L. Mencken, Stephen Foster, Sigmund Freud, Thomas Wolfe, Charles Darwin, Kurt Gödel, Teilhard de Chardin, I'm guessing at his name, the Alpha and Omega concept, Carl Mannheim, which I just mentioned, and there are a few more actual names mentioned to look up or not. No spoilers, I am going to stop here. I will say this again. I sat in my recliner with my laptop writing this review. Read the story to see why I said this twice. This novella can clearly be read as a compelling, unusual, and fast-paced SF detective procedural adventure, complete with a wisecracking gumshoe, with a really cool gunfight, and a personal combat scene between a more or less human-shaped self-aware AI, and a highly trained human combat expert. Zelazny even mentions Frankenstein. Or you can look up the names and more or less receive an overview of several 5-credit-hour college courses in religion, philosophy, ideology, psychology, and the amazing connections between these Zelazny makes. I did the latter and enjoyed the historically factual education quite a bit. Now, I also list out all of Zelazny's Hugos and Nebulas and other things, but I'm not going to read all that off. We'd be here for a long time again. But that's what I'm going to say about this, and I hope everybody gets a chance to read this fabulous volume of masterpiece science fiction. Thanks a lot.